Hi, it's Jerry Roberts back with a new episode of Newsmakers Journal of the Plague Year. It is Friday, September 4th, and we are joined by our good friend Gwyn Lurie, editor-in-chief of the Montecito Journal. Boy, I haven't seen you for a while. How you holding up?
No, I've been waiting for you to call.
Oh, well, I've been waiting for your website, but we can get into that later.
So,
So
Montecito isn't ranking on your
let's
show.
Let's talk about what's going on in Montecito. You got a cover story today, I guess, or on the paper that came out yesterday about the school waivers, and Santa Barbara Unified and Goleta are not going to go back anytime soon. Certainly, it doesn't look like in this semester, but both Montecito Union and Cold Spring have applied for waivers. What's the story?
Well, I mean, as you know, these are always tricky decisions, and I've just been given a note, a very important note. Tricky decisions for superintendents to make. I think that they did a lot of vetting, both Dr. Amy Alzina and Anthony Rainey, respectively, of Cold Spring and Montecito Union, the superintendents. I think they did a lot of vetting of their stakeholders, of parents and staff, and it seems to me, at least in Montecito, I think it was like 65-35 staff wanting to go back, and parents, it was like 90-10.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it. I think they both have the open space to hold classes outside. They're not planning on going back inside. I think they're, offering a remote opportunity to families that don't feel comfortable with it, which I think is really important. And they're gonna probably have somewhere from 12 to, I know a little bit more about Montecito's plans because I had an in-depth conversation with Anthony Rainey, but I know that they're planning on reducing the classrooms to somewhere between 12 and 16 and setting up little pods of learning so that there's not too big a crowd of kids together, and there will be mask wearing even amongst kindergartners through second graders. So
yeah, good luck keeping that on. And how are they handling the testing issue, Gwyn?
On the 8th, there's testing at Montecito Union. I think the 10th, it's for Cold Springs, and they're going to test all the teachers and kids who agreed to be tested. I think they're going to make their final decision based on the testing results. Obviously, if they get some surprisingly big number of people who test positive, I assume they'll rethink it.
Yeah, and they're still having to go through this enormously complex application process to get the waiver, right? They have to go to the state, and then it has to go to the county public health officials.
Actually, they directly apply to the county, as I understand it. Yeah. So yeah, that's it's complex. And as I wrote in my piece this week, I mean, these decisions are always hard and they're never clear. And I analogized it this week to Anthony Rainey deciding to close the school the day before the debris flow when they were only in the voluntary zone. And, there were lots of parents who were saying, we don't want to have our kids stay home from school. We don't, because people didn't know what was coming. And, as a board, I was then on the board, and Anthony as the superintendent, we sort of said, look, if there's even a 2% chance that something could happen, why would you ever put kids at risk? And he made the final decision to close the school. And in retrospect, it turns out to be a great decision, but these things are always proven in retrospect.
So is there an estimated date or where for reopening? What's the schedule look like?
I think they were saying they would probably decide by like the 24th. That's what I think Kelly wrote in her piece. Kelly Mahan Herrick wrote about it. She had a long interview with Anthony and Amy Alzina. Yeah. So I think the 24th is the date that I remember hearing.
All right, well, we'll keep an eye on it. The other thing in your piece, you mentioned that there have been 130 homes sold since the pandemic began. What's going on there?
What's going on there is not what we expected 2 years ago when people were leaving because of the debris flow. It's just weird. I think that the pandemic has made people all over the country rethink where they want to live and how they want to live. Obviously, a lot of people are working remotely for a much longer period of time than they ever thought this would last, and potentially permanently, some companies. So I imagine there are people who thought one day when I don't have to go to an office every day, I would prefer to not live in a city. And those people, whether it's from LA or up north, are thinking about where they would want to live. And Montecito was one of those places.
Yeah. So what is that doing? Is there more traffic already? I mean, have you seen it manifest in any practical way?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's amazing, this town. Like, first of all, it's a pretty small town. There's 9,000 to 10,000 people. So if you've lived here for a period of time, you know most of the people, or have recognized most people you see at restaurants and stuff. I have gone out for social distance coffees or into stores, and I don't recognize a lot of people.
Huh.
So there are, and if you drive down Coast Village Road on a Friday or Saturday or Thursday night, it's packed with the parklets and outdoor dining. And as far as I know, a lot of these restaurants are doing better than ever, especially the ones who have really put an effort into and have the space to expand outside.
Really? Wow. And how about other businesses, retail and so on? What's going on there?
I think retail is probably a different story. I don't have hard facts about retail.
How's your advertising? Let's put it that way.
We're doing well. I mean, I think people need to advertise more than ever. I think people are pivoting and trying to figure out different ways to get customers. Retail has never been the bulk of our advertising.
It's all real estate,
our
right?
advertising has always been real estate, or the majority of our advertising. And so that's obviously in a strong position right now. So that's been good for everybody. I mean, Montecito, is a place known to work very hard at not overdeveloping. So it's not like there are more houses being built than ever before. There are just less houses languishing on the market.
Yeah.
I mean, there's more demand than inventory, I think.
Yeah. And of course, one of your new residents, or three of your new residents actually, the Prince, formerly known as Prince Harry, and Meghan, and
formerly known as Prince,
and Archie. That's been interesting. I actually broke that story locally, but I'm not the kind to pat myself on the back. But be that as it may, this is an area, and certainly Montecito more than even Santa Barbara, where people just kind of take celebrity status and famous people in stride, and it's no big deal. And that's, kind of the sensibility is to leave people alone. But you had an interesting, I really liked your cover. I think it was 2 weeks ago, where you sort of did this Urzet's National Enquirer tabloid kind of thing about them moving to town. What's been the reaction, and have you seen paparazzi around?
Well, there's been a lot of helicopters overhead.
Yeah.
I heard this statistic. I'm not sure if it's true. I can't swear it, but I heard some of these places are offering $250,000 for a picture. So
what?
So you might want to get your camera out, Jerry.
Well, wait a minute. That's you. You ought to be at the front of the line over there, right?
No, I will say you're right. Montecito is a place that prides itself on giving people. There are a lot of people here who are well known, not just in the Hollywood sense of the word, but in business and industry. Sure. And other things. And they do come here because it's a place that you could have some privacy, and where people don't do a lot of rubbernecking. And, so I will say, I'm glad you broke the story and I didn't, because I would have taken a lot of grief for breaking that story. But it is a story. I mean, it's a story because of why they left England and why they chose to come here. And I do hope that they could find as normal a life as they could find anywhere.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I'm just thinking, if I'm in your shoes and, I'm running the community newspaper, and we got Harry and Meghan are here. on the one hand, yeah, you want to leave them alone. On the other hand, gee, I'd sure like to interview them. Have you put in an interview request, or what are you doing to try to connect with them?
Well, my strategy is do nothing, play hard to get. It's kind of like what you do when you're dating, right? So
This is not what I did when I was dating, I can tell you.
I'm just hoping they'll like see this show, Jerry, and go, she seems like a really thoughtful person I would want to talk to, trustworthy,
Yeah.
credible.
So you're not.
You know what? I've not directly reached out. I honestly feel like at some point, if they stay here and they become real residents, it would be wonderful to do a really thoughtful profile on them, as I would anybody who lived here. Like, I think the stories behind the people who live here are really interesting. I'm not a super big royal watcher. I don't, I think some of the most interesting stories are the untold stories. And I say this, and I don't just say this, for, to gain point. I think this community has an incredible wealth of interesting people.
Yeah.
And
but you got Richard there, Meinhardt. He must be chomping at the bit to go running up there, no?
I can't speak for Richard.
All right. And then the other thing is, I know that you've really put a lot of, and are continuing to put a lot of focus on nonprofits, on what the late Larry Crandall liked to call the eleemosynary community. And obviously, Harry and Meghan, as I like to call them, would be a great get, or, would be someone that you'd really be interested in getting involved in, Girls Inc. or any number of other programs. Have you heard through your sources, anybody who's reached out to them to try to get them involved in nonprofit work?
Well, if I were a nonprofit, I would be holding a board meeting right now trying to figure out that. I'm sure there are these conversations happening. I mean, we are about to launch this is the first time I've said this, so you're making news here.
No, you're making it. I'm just reporting it. Yeah.
This is called Newsmakers, right? Am I on Newsmakers?
That's right.
No, we have already launched the program, and we'll come out with our first ever giving list book in November.
Oh, now tell me about that. What is that?
It's a beautiful, well, there are many components to it. There's a digital component to it. There's a newspaper component to it. And then we're publishing a beautiful book in November that tells the story of 52 nonprofits in this community, and from a narrative storytelling perspective. And really, this is something, this is a way, this community has a fairly sophisticated donor base, and they're donors that don't, they want to learn and understand about the organizations. They want to become sort of passionately committed to the causes, and they do. And so we want to provide a portal for that in this community.
So it's aimed at donors specifically?
All over. Yeah.
Okay, and that comes out in?
November.
Okay, while we're talking about when things come out, how's that website coming along?
Excuse me, I'm letting my dogs out. You know my dogs. Here.
And while we have a moment,
Sorry.
lets her dogs out.
I'm sorry. I know that was critical airtime.
Oh, that was great.
I'm sorry, Jerry. What were you asking?
Live TV. Holy cow. Oh,
okay. The week of the 14th of September, we're launching.
Okay. Because you told me in November that it was coming out in January, and then you told me in January it's coming out in March.
I told you it's all about hard to get.
Okay. Well, we'll be looking for that.
We are actively debugging. It's going to be a very robust, very user-friendly website that we already are really proud of. We've already uploaded a year of archival papers.
That's the pain in the ass it's
hard. It's
putting the archive on.
It's hard. And Trent Watanabe, our art director, and Tim Buckley and I credit Trent for the brilliant art direction, have really worked hard on the look, which will also, by the way, be reflected in the glossy magazine that comes out that same week. Our
what's that about? Is that a real estate deal?
No, it has two cover stories. One is of local Alan Kozlowski and his interesting life, and one is about Pete Muller, another very interesting Montecito resident. You'll have to read the pieces, but because we chose to do two different cover stories for a lot of reasons, half the run will be one cover and half the run will be the other cover. So they each get a cover.
All right. Okay, let me ask you about the Roundabout, the Olive Mill Roundabout, which seems to have raised a lot of controversy. Josh Molina had this piece the other day about how the County Planning Commission was on the call with the Montecito Planning Commission, and then they all got mad at each other and hung up, or Deborah Schwartz hung up, or somebody hung up. Anyways, what's going on? If people are not happy about the project or the design or what?
I think that it's very easy at arm's length for the city or the county, Caltrans, all of that, to create these projects. And even though Coast Village Road is technically in Santa Barbara City, it's also the center of Montecito. And there are real concerns here. There always are about safety for pedestrians. I mean, this is a town where people walk, where people ride bikes, and roundabouts are always complicated safety-wise for pedestrians. So that's a big concern. I think, we think through changes very long and hard in this community. And so there are concerns about how it will look. There are concerns about safety for pedestrians. There are concerns about how it's going to affect egress and ingress to the building on the corner of Olive Mill and Coast Village Road, a newly built building, how the year-long construction is going to affect residents who live there. So there's all sorts of input, and we want to not rush this process. So the Montecito Planning Commission wanted to take another couple of weeks to really talk through the issues and make sure that those are being considered.
So is the Montecito Commission not on the same page as the County Commission? Would that be a fair statement?
The City Planning Commission, Santa Barbara Planning Commission, are they not on the same page? I think they have more. I think they have more concerns. And I think sometimes they don't always feel heard as much as they would like to feel heard or considered in the process. I think that it's easy to kind of just say, look, we got to get off the phone. We got to finish this movie. Let's push this through this meeting. Let's push this through. And Montecito feels like, well, that's a false deadline. Why are you pushing it through until we've worked through all the bugs and feel comfortable that this is safe and a good thing for our community? So I think we just want to be able to take the time to have all of our concerns addressed.
All right. Well, speaking of things that take a long time, you have a piece about Paul Madsen, whose house was badly damaged and still waiting to get the permission. What's the latest on that?
I was told, and I have to check this, that the day after we ran the piece, not taking credit for this.
Oh, no, you got to take credit. Montecito Journal gets results.
It's a big coincidence, but I consider this the best kind of advocacy journalism, that his permit, he was told his permit was coming through, but it took longer to get his permit than it did to build the entire Miramar. So, I mean, I'm not sure what happened there, and I'm sure there are reasons, but, I just wanted, and we just, and Nick Scow, who wrote the piece, wanted to make sure that as is our role in journalism, that the powers that be understand that we're watching what's going on, that we're aware this hasn't happened, but also that, as we all move on to the next tragedy du jour, that there are still people who are suffering the fallout from that last one. And this guy sits in his car outside his house every day wanting his house back. He grew up in that house, in the 1950s. And his own personal tragedy, and it shouldn't be glossed over.
No, and it's interesting when we used to do surveys of readers and stuff. That was one of the things that readers were always most critical about, was the lack of follow-up of stories. In other words, you'd make a big splash about something, gee, this is, and then a year later, hey, whatever happened to that? Nobody remembers. So that's a really good, I was glad to see that story. And yeah, you got to start a column that says Mojo gets results, and just take credit for whatever you want to take credit for. And speaking of Nick, this was a couple of weeks ago, but I really liked his series on the cannabis ordinance, not to bring up that old saw, but he really dug into it and he talked to a lot of people. Are you still hearing from readers in Carp and Summerlin about that issue, or is that kind of gone away?
No, we hear about it all the time. And it has more tentacles than you would think. I mean, there are a lot of, Santa Barbara's a funny place, I've learned. It's a funny place.
What are the tentacles?
I'm not at liberty to share some of the tentacles, but I just do think that it impacts so many different
tentacles. No, yeah, now I got my headline. Good.
It just impacts a whole lot of people, and I do think that there's a lot of concerns on the part of this community that we don't have as robust a press as we should have. And one of the things that keeps, our public servants honest and
or not honest or not
is good reporting and is getting into the weeds, so to speak. So that's a good headline, by the way.
Yeah. I'll leave that one to you.
So anyway, I mean, look, it's very complicated, and as you know, I'm not saying anything anyone doesn't know, but yeah, it is. And in fact, I went over to a friend's house the other day, and I hadn't driven there in a long time. It does smell strongly.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's like, I don't know how I would live in that area with that every day. I mean, that is just life-changing.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned, that we like to take a long time to get decisions right and make things work. And that's the problem with the cannabis ordinance, is that, they decided they were in the, the tech business. So break things and move fast. And that's what they did. And they've completely broken the land use planning process in the county of Santa Barbara. And DOS wants it all to go away, but it's not going away. In fact, Leslie Westbrook, she has a column about the controversy about the I guess the retail site that's being proposed for Summerlin. Where does that stand?
It has certainly not been approved that I know of. I mean, I know the community largely does not want it there. They had a survey recently that they did internally with their new strategic planning committee. We're having a piece on that next week, actually. But it is, I mean, listen, I totally agree with what you just said. I think this is all about, a process that needs to be put in place for these sorts of things, so that we're not allowing these industries to ask for forgiveness. We should be insisting that they ask for permission and not trying to clean it up after the fact. And I think that happens a lot around here.
Yeah. All right. Well, how are you doing? When you came on the show back in, it seems like 10 years ago, but it was only last fall. It was in November, I think, when you took over the paper, to November, December. And of course, you expected that we would have a global pandemic and a collapse of the economy and national protests about race. What is it? Everything you've expected running the paper?
First of all, I was on more recently than that. I've been on.
Well, I know. I'm just talking about when you were first on.
It's been great. I mean, it's been great. I feel really lucky to have had this to sink my teeth in during this time, because I think I would have gone crazy. I'm always amazed by this community and how everyone kind of steps up and helps each other during these times. We had a great cash mob. I think we talked about that, but raised a lot of money for businesses and minimum wage workers. And yeah, I mean, has it been harder? Absolutely. Did I expect all this? I stopped asking the question, what else could happen? Because I'm afraid of the answer. You know, it's certainly been a really weird year, and it's challenging. Anyone with kids at home who's also trying to work, you know, knows that it's a lot. My husband always has this analogy that it's like you have this full bowl of soup and then this matzo ball gets plopped right in the middle of it and it all goes cascading over the sides. That's kind of, and they keep putting more matzo balls in the soup. So it's like, I don't even have any soup anymore. But yeah, I mean, it's been great. We're putting together a great team. I'm loving working with Tim. And we get in great political arguments all the time. And, you know, I think all this stuff with racial equity and inclusion, and I think these are really interesting conversations to be had. And what does privilege look like? And, you know, and they're hard to have these conversations in any community. And I think, you know, for some reasons, you know, also so in this community. But I am impressed with how many people are kind of open to having the conversation. And it's a complicated moment for sure, but never a loss of things to talk about or write about.
Are you guys going to endorse in the elections at all?
Mm-hmm.
For president? Oh, I can't wait to read that one. Dual endorsement.
I just have to figure out what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will have some endorsements, and we're going to do profiles on all the candidates that we'll be voting on in our community, and all.
Are you going to endorse in the Santa Barbara school district?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That affects our community.
Yeah.
Our kids go to school there, and that's our board.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll look for those. Well, Gwyn Lurie, thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your enormously packed schedule over there. And good luck on
me. You are before we leave?
Oh, you know, living the dream. I'm just I've been out of the house 5 times since March 5th, all to go to the doctor. So yeah, I've commandeered the living room and set up my office in here, and I have my little mat so I can do my stretches and stuff. So yeah, you know, I've always sort of dreamed of living in a cave, so it's good for me. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Hey, we'll get you back when you get that famous website up and going. September now. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Bye.